Yeah, I'm confused now. So like we can talk about abortion if you want, because Goons really wants me to talk about it. So yeah.
I don't run abortion that often. It's not my
What sort of views
favorite
do you
topic.
hold?
I'm a
What sort of-
utilitarian, particularly an act utilitarian.
Yeah, let me think. I'm a normative anti-realist. I don't think ought exist. So, well now,
Fuck
I
you,
could.
buddy.
No, wait. Give me a second. Let me think for a good second. Hmm. It's depending on specific actions. Wait. So, do you care about like just? Do you care for current utility only? Or, like,
What do you mean?
so for example, if I save Hitler from a pool where he was drowning, but then he ends up like necessarily killing a billion people, you'd say I still did a good action in the moment, or the action is good
Oh
because
no.
I saved him.
Oh no. If
Uh,
you have knowledge that he's gonna do it, the overall utility of the action is outweighed by the future utility.
mm, okay, so then you have like okay, so then the rule would just be like do the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people while also accounting for future utility. Okay
Yeah,
then.
given you have knowledge, like I don't think like I think like an action is still bad, but I don't think like an agent is morally responsible if they have no knowledge that like saving this person is gonna make them like kill two people or something. But
Mm,
I think the action is still like disutile. Like they ought not do it,
okay.
but you just don't have knowledge that they ought not do it.
Okay. Um. Yeah. So my question is, how do you measure utility? How do you
It's just gonna be overall pleasure versus overall
overall
suffering.
pleasure? Okay. So like, if there was a world in which like we sat everyone down and we drugged them so that they could only feel pleasure and they sat and they grew old and died there, you'd say, and pleasure is the only emotion they felt. You'd say that's a better world than the world we have now.
Pleasure is the only thing they feel. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like trivially, like
Mm,
that would provide utility, but if there's like some consequence for it, no. But like if they're not gonna reproduce, so there's not like future like they're not gonna
yeah.
reproduce, so there's no future people for more like pleasure to happen.
Yeah.
Then yeah, I think that's like
The
disutile.
pleasure, okay. I mean, that just like, let me think. Because it's like, it just doesn't seem, I mean, what sort of motivations would you give for utilitarianism? Like, what sort of motivations would you give? Yeah,
Well, I
what
just
sort of,
think that
Mhm.
I just think that like maximizing pleasure and minimizing suffering are just going to be like insanely intuitive to everyone. Particularly because everyone values, at least from what I believe, everyone would value like pleasure is good and suffering is bad universally. Um,
Yeah,
so
that's like,
if
that's in line with other views or the normative
well,
ethical view.
yeah, obviously, but
So,
the thing
like,
is, I believe like I think everyone values pleasure and suffering equally, and I think that universally pleasure is good and suffering is
is
bad. And
there an
so
argument for that?
I believe if these things are good or what we would see as good and what we see as bad, then I believe that we have some imperative to maximize it, um, and make it so we
That's,
have the most possible good and the most
yeah,
possible
no.
bad.
Okay, yes. So you understand first of all, simply saying that, oh yeah, we have intuitions towards maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. That's also in line with other like normative ethical views. And the other part was like so I'm specifically looking for a motivation that these other views don't have. And the other part was something like we value pleasure and pain equally. So I need to know, to be clear, like what do you mean when you say we value it equally?
So say for example, there's some agent which sees like someone getting shot, and
Hmm.
then someone else getting like a prick on their finger. Universally, everyone would say that well, someone getting shot is like obviously worse. But then say there's someone else that's like there's like a girl who like just got an A+ on a report card, and then
Hmm.
there's another person who just ate their first meal in like 3 weeks. Then everyone would
Hmm.
universally say, well, this thing is better. And say there's someone that got
No,
pricked on the finger, and then
I,
there's someone else that say there's someone that got pricked on the finger, and then another person that got an A on the report card, and would say, well, getting pricked on the finger is bad. and like getting an A on your report card is good.
Yeah, okay. Obviously, like I can recognize that both like each of these options are bad and good, right, respectively. But
Yeah.
that doesn't like tell me at all what you mean when you say we value pleasure and pain equally. Do you mean as if that if there's some form of like instance of pain that is occurring and like this pain is at a set level and there's a set instance of like pleasure and that pleasure is also at a set level, we
Mhm.
would like have equal sorts of feelings to maximize the pleasure and minimize the pain.
Yeah, everyone would probably have some. Everyone would probably like say, given they have all knowledge about like a given situation, they'd probably say like, yeah, we should probably like maximize the good thing, and the good thing is really really good, and
Yeah,
minimize the bad thing, and the bad thing is like really
yeah,
really bad.
no. Specifically, the claim you're making is specifically about like them being equal. So we want to maximize the pleasure and minimize the pain equally, right? Because that's what it would mean for us to value them equally. But then my question is like, what sort of motivation would you give for that? So let's say like some analogy, some rapist is getting tortured and he's feeling pain to a level an extent 10, and then somebody else is feeling pleasure to an extent 10, right? I don't think that in that sort of context, even if they are feeling displeasure, that we would have intuitions towards sort of like minimizing the sort of pain they're feeling compared to like maximizing the pleasure of the other person. Or say this other person, they also have this like sort of feeling that they have, and this feeling is like, oh, this pleasure is derived from like raping a baby. Right now, you may say if they're like what's it called? You may say that, oh well, what's it called? If the pain would be the reason why, and the pain being more than the baby, like the pain from the baby being more than like the pleasure the person gets is the reason why it's bad. But for under your view, you'd also have to accept that we also have some form of like at least weak motivation to maximize the pleasure that our rapist is feeling, right?
Um, Sorry, is just the question that given like you grant that the pain of the baby is outweighed by the pleasure that the rapist could feel, but you believe like
Mm.
utilitarians are claiming that there's some like
No, no,
imperative
no, no.
to maximize like the pleasure the rapist could possibly get.
No. So like you'd have to okay, so under your view, you'd have to also be granting something like the fact that if there was a man who's raping a baby, right? And we value pain and pleasure equally. So you'd have to say that we also do have some form of weak motivation towards maximizing the pleasure of that rapist. However, that motivation is just taken over by the motivation we get towards minimizing the suffering of the baby. But then my question would be, what sort of argument would you give that people have even any sort of motivation towards maximizing the pleasure of a rapist, no matter how weak?
Well, the thing is, like, if all you're saying is like, why do we have some motivation to maximize the pleasure of like someone who does bad things? You can just replace rapist with like murderer here. You can replace rapist with like literally fucking anything. Um, and I believe like it's just because like overall happiness generally is gonna give some good outcome, right? So like if the rapist, the murderer, or whatever is happy, then well if they're happy, then they might not do bad things because they're already happy or something. Or we can just say, uh, well, this individual person's happiness universally would just be outweighed by
Yeah, no, like I
just be
understand
outweighed.
yes, like one person's
So if
happiness.
all you're saying, hold on, just to be clear, if all you're saying, if all you're saying is in a vacuum, like we have this rapist pleasure which we need to
Mhm.
maximize. Well, trivially, if there's more, like I agree,
No,
like
not that there's more. No, not that there's more. So again, your view is
sorry,
specifically that any instance of pleasure, we ought to maximize it, right? However, like if the pleasure that's being felt is like outweighed by the pain, then we ought to like decrease the pain more than like we decrease or like we ought to decrease the pain, even if it results in us decreasing the pleasure as well, because there's more pain than there is pleasure. So my question is like, what would be the sort of motivation you'd give to say that we have even any sort of weak motivation to maximize the pleasure, maximize the preferences of like somebody who's raping somebody else.
so so the thing is, the motivation we would have is given like this pleasure, like given the pleasure, like isn't like given it's not outweighed,
Hmm.
then like I believe that that pleasure would probably be good because we just like it's just the same case for any like case of pleasure. Like given like
Yeah, no, Yeah, no,
No, no, hold on,
Michael, like
hold on. Wait,
the
wait, wait,
thing
wait,
is,
hold on.
mhm,
Wait, hold on. Sure, hold on. So
God,
it would be the same for any case of pleasure, right? So I just give you the exact same answer. Generally people being happy, or universally even people being happy, is just gonna be so like this rapist being happy, given they're not like causing some disproportionate harm to someone else. Well, we would just say, well, the
no,
reason we have some
I don't
motivation.
even think people,
Hold on,
someone would grant that
hold on,
either.
hold on, hold on. So the reason we have some motivation to make this rapist feel pleasure is because
Hmm.
well, generally we're just gonna see pleasure as good, right? And I can give you
Well,
some study on that. Like
I can
it's just
grant
like
that, like, look,
neurological.
I can
Correct.
grant that, like, generally we see pleasure as good. That's completely fine. However, the sort of claim a utilitarian makes that no other person makes is that in every situation, I mean, well, not every single utilitarian, that's at least the claim you made, is that in every single instance of pleasure, we ought to maximize it, right? However, like, I can give you another scenario in which, for example, I'm a policeman and I arrest somebody, right? And I get some mild amount of play, and this person was about to rape 7 people, right? So, and then I arrest this guy, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
slightly happy that I arrested this guy. However, he's feeling so frustrated, right, that he didn't get to rape these people, and the frustration he feels from not being allowed to rape these people is more than the pleasure I gain, right? So, under your sort of view,
Mm-hmm.
you'd have to say that we have some form of strong reason to let this guy go, and then actually like go ahead
No, I
and
don't.
do the all, like, we should just go ahead and like just not let me arrest the guy, right? Seeing as the pleasure that I'm doing, or at least in the vacuum, seeing as, oh, we have some form of motivation to stop him
Mm-hmm.
from, or stop me from arresting him, because like I'm maximizing the sort of displeasure he's feeling, right?
Yeah, no,
Because again, under
no,
your own view specifically, you hold to the fact that we should maximize every single case of pleasure and minimize any single case of like displeasure. No.
no, that's not true. So the thing is, sure, the pleasure you're gaining from arresting this person is outweighed from the displeasure they're getting from being arrested and not being able to rape this person. But
Mm-hmm.
also, we need to factor in the displeasure they're giving the people that they're going to rape, right? That's what a consequentialist
No, no,
believes.
no, no,
You
no.
don't believe,
Okay, so I'll change the hypothetical. The people who is going to rape have been repositioned, so they aren't there anymore. So you can't rape them.
so he can't rape them?
Yeah, in the
Sorry, I'm
situation
confused.
he can't rape. Okay, so he did the pleasure. He's like angry because he wants to, right? And I'm stopping him from like going in and seeing if he can do it. But like, and what's it called? That's the reason why he's like angry. So he's angry because he wants to. He doesn't know whether or not they're there or not. So the reason why he's getting angry is because his intention to like to rape these people is getting thwarted right now.
Well, I mean, what's it called? Given he's not actually going to do it, and there's some hypothetical, is it just like necessarily like this person won't rape anyone? Like,
Hmm?
given like if they stay free, even if it's not just right now, in the
Yeah, no, no.
future they won't rape anyone as well. Is that like the
Um,
stipulation?
Sure. Grant that they don't, like, what's it called? Grant that they, like, every single time in which they want to, or they go and they try and rape somebody, but they fail every time. You'd have to say that we have some form of motivation to let this guy roam free. If he has intentions of raping people, we should still let him roam free, because the displeasure he'd feel from like not being allowed to rape these people would be like greater than the pleasure we gain from like stopping him. But like
Yeah,
again, if
I don't think we should like.
wait,
I,
again, if it's like if the sort of basis you're giving is like intuition, where we generally value pleasure, and that's is sort of like motivation you're giving, then
Mhm.
I'd also like, don't even think like anyone even would grant that like the sort of, now I think the bullet that you'd have to buy in this scenario would be intuitive at all.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think we should lock up like schizophrenic people who like have the intention to murder people either. I don't think like if someone doesn't do something, but they have some intent to do it, given they're going to fail every time, and given there's actually going to be no disutility derived from them being around, then I think trivially, yeah, utilitarian will say if there's no disutility derived from a given situation, then there's no moral imperative to stop it.
Okay, so
That,
one, then you aren't an act utilitarian anymore. So again, an act utilitarian specifically bases like values
that's
utility off of, wait, chill. So an act utilitarian specifically like what's it called? They want to maximize utility of every specific action, correct?
yeah, every specific action and its consequences.
Okay, and look, this is like what I got from the IP. So, according to an act utilitarian, or according to like a rule utilitarian, a specific action is just morally justified if it conforms to a moral rule, right? And the moral rule is justified if it's like if its conclusion or if its conclusion to our moral code would generate more utility than any of the other possible options, right?
Sorry, I
And then
wasn't focused.
okay,
Repeat
look,
like the
so
last
the
part.
I look literally, so an act the distinction between act and rule utilitarianism is that act utilitarians apply the utilitarian principle to individual actions, whereas rule utilitarians like evaluate utility based off of specific rules. So if this action
Hmm.
doesn't conform to a certain rule that you have, so again, in the Hitler scenario, right, the action in itself, no, so not like a massacre. So you would have to say that if the thing that you're valuing of, you're basing whether or not something is like good or not basing it of whether or not it conforms to this specific standard. And the specific standard is something like whether or not it gives us more utility now and in the future. That would be a moral rule, right? And that would be, you'd have to say if something conforms to this rule, then it's good or not. So that would no longer be act utilitarianism. That would be rule utilitarianism now.
No, it's not. So the thing is, if all you're saying is, well, there's the rule that that act utilitarians follow, that you ought maximize utility. That's fucking trivial. That's what a utilitarian states, right? But all I'm saying is like the judgment of a given
No,
action
wait.
is going to
Repeat
be
what you
an
said.
action and its consequences, right? This just
Wait,
isn't
repeat what you
fucking
said.
relevant. You're not
Wait,
saying
repeat what
anything
you
here.
said. Well, okay, wait, repeat what you said.
So if all you're saying is there's some rule that you ought maximize utility,
No, that
then
isn't the rule.
that's just fucking trivial, right? And
No,
an
that
act
isn't the rule.
utilitarian doesn't just state, sorry, an
Wait,
act utilitarian doesn't just state you judge an action based off of its current consequences. You base it off the
no,
action itself,
wait.
current
That
consequences,
isn't the rule.
and the
Wait.
consequences in the future. You fucking idiot.
Yugi, Yugi, that isn't the rule. So look, the rule specifically was that an action, or the rule specifically was we should maximize utility currently and in the future, right? So that would be the sort of rule. So an action is good if it
That's just
conforms
what a
to that rule.
utilitarian
Wait,
states.
no. Look, an act utilitarian would just say like any specific action is good if it maximizes utility. So no, whether or not it maximizes utility in the future or not, right? Because
Yes.
then that would be no wait, that would be a specific sort of moral code, right? Instead, you would be whether or not it maximizes utility currently. I can get you the like passage in the IP where they state that. The distinction is like
Wait,
obvious. Even the like sort of refutations you give is obvious.
wait,
Like
real
between
quick. Wait, real quick. Do you
Mhm.
think an act utilitarian can't say, like, can't give you the answer that I gave for like the Hitler analogy? Just to be clear, do you think like an act utilitarian can give you that answer?
No, I think for them to be able to give you that answer, it would have to be like what's it called? It would be have to be whether or not like it conforms with like generating the most amount of utility in the current moment. Wait, give me a second. Let me go read you the definition and tell me if you disagree. So, an act utilitarian holds that rightness or wrongness of an action depends entirely on its specific consequences. Each action should be judged on whether or not it produces the greatest or the greatest amount of utility of greatest number without regard of or greatest good for the greatest number without regard for any general rules. Do you disagree with
Yeah,
that?
I agree with that. That's my fucking definition, retard.
Okay, and you disagree with the rule utilitarian when they say that like what's it called specifically you should gauge utility off of or you should gauge whether or not an action is good, whether or not it conforms to a specific rule set.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Yeah, I disagree with that. I think you should judge like the utility of an action not based not based off of if it like confirms some moral rule. Rather, it's based off
Mhm.
of the action itself and the consequences of the action in the future, right? So, like for the Hitler analogy,
Yeah.
an act utilitarian would say, well, this action would be useful because you're saving someone presently, but in the future, the consequences of this action would cause like much greater
The,
disutility
the,
than it would cause utility, right? So trivially, an act utilitarian would say, well, the maximization of utility here is the maximization of utility here, given someone has the knowledge that Hitler is going to do this, is to not save him.
okay. Look, so I'm just gonna try and like explain this to you again, and then maybe we can talk about something else. So, like, if you just repeat back to me the Hitler analogy, and you tell me that, oh well, what's it called? The saving him in the current moment would be good. So there, you are directly you're directly correlating whether or not it is good or not based off the action. Now, the action that would be saving him, that one is good because that one is good because it maximizes utility in the moment, right? However, him killing other people is completely external to the action. It has nothing to do with the action, right? Because it's obviously it isn't logically entailed that if you save him, he's going to kill people. So it is completely disconnected from the action. So when he goes around and kills other people, that wouldn't affect whether or not the action is good or not, specifically because the action there that is being referenced is saving somebody, right? And then an anti-utilitarian would say that that's good. But the other sort of refutation I want to give utilitarianism is like, do you think that like quantity of good is like quantity of good should outweigh like the quality sort of?
Quantity of good should outweigh the quality. What do you mean by that?
So like let's say there's a drug addict, and this drug addict like takes drugs, obviously, and he takes heroin, right? And he takes it for like 20 minutes, right?
Uh-huh.
And he feels 20 amounts of pain. And then there's a mother, and the mother just reunites with the child, right? She reunites with the child. She finally hugs him after 10 years in the Serie A war of 2024, right? Do you think that this, and let's say stipulate that the pleasure she feels there, right? If you like calculated it, is like less than the pleasure the drug addict feels. Do you feel as if like in two different possible worlds where we had like we play these situations over and over again ad infinitum, right? We should preserve the one where the drug addict continues to take drugs forever and feels pleasure, right? Or do you think like we should preserve the world in which the mother like is able to keep contact with the child?
Just to be clear, the stipulation here is that there's no disutility derived from the person doing drugs.
Hmm?
Was that a what or a yes?
No, repeat what you said.
Is the stipulation here that the person doing drugs doesn't get any disutility from doing it?
No, he's just actually well, he's
Okay.
like a bit inebriated, but that's it.
Okay, cool. So if the stipulation is that he gets disutility, I think harming his body is going to outweigh the amount of pleasure he's getting
Oh,
from like
actually,
shooting his drugs.
you know what?
That's what
Actually, no, no, no.
that's what utility
Wait,
calculates.
I just want to change the analogy to like fit your view better. So stipulate that in both of these situations, they feel equal amounts of pleasure.
They feel equal amounts of pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah. So if they feel equal amounts of pleasure, then it would just be the case that the harm done to the man's body is going to outweigh, or at least add on to the amount of pleasure that he's deriving from doing these drugs. Hold
Regardless
on.
of like, wait,
Sorry. I'm
I
trying to
just want
respond to your question.
you're
Sorry.
just
I'm trying to respond to
responding
your
to the
question.
analogy. Wait, look, you're just responding to the analogy, but I want to edit it so it can make it simpler for you. Like, stipulate that like he's inebriated, but that's also part of the pleasure process, right? So, like, that's obviously part of being high, being inebriated. So, again, look, it's like
Yeah.
that's
So
not the analogy, you know.
yeah, no, but the problem is he's doing harm to his body. That's the problem here. Right? The problem isn't that he's deriving pleasure from the drugs. The problem isn't that he's feeling a bit high or a bit intoxicated from the drugs. The problem is that the drugs are harming his body. Right? But if it's just like someone smoking weed, it's not doing any harm to their body. And then like
Mm-hmm.
trivially, the utility is equalized for both of these
Mm-hmm.
individuals. Or like there's more utility derived from one, then trivially, what a fucking utilitarian would say is that you ought to do the one. The one that is better is the one that maximizes utility. What the fuck?
Okay, look,
That's
so
trivial.
wait, one, you said in the sentence that like the utility was equalized, but then you should do the one with more utility. So I don't get what you mean there. But two, like even if we stipulate that the amount of like he gets like no damage done to his body, I think it's like obvious to almost everyone in the call. And like maybe we can just get a poll done on this, but it's like, look, even if we stipulate that two different people were feeling like equal amounts of pleasure, the drug addict got no harm done to him. There's like we still have some form of like clear intuition towards like we should preserve the world where the mother is like keeping contact to the child compared to the other world
Mm-hmm.
where the guy is actually like becoming a drug addict for the rest of his
Mm-hmm.
days, right? So again, it seems as if like there's some sort of distinction between the sort of quantity of goods, right, compared to the quality. So we'd say like 10 mothers, right, caring for their children and getting pleasure from caring for their children. I think that like we have strong intuitions to say those 10 mothers caring for their children is way better than like another possible world where like 11 mothers, right, are just beating their children but getting way more pleasure than the children are, right? So again, it just seems as if like quality and quantity of goods, they just have such a large distinction that I don't understand how you
Yeah,
utilitarian would account for them.
yeah. so the problem here is you're stipulating that, well, the quantity actually does outweigh the quality here. But generally, yes, a utilitarian would say, give like there's some drug addict and there's some mother reuniting with their children. What a utilitarian would say, well, yeah, obviously, like fucking trivially, the mother reuniting with her children is better. But if you stipulate we're in some possible world in which that's not the case, then trivially, a fucking utilitarian would say you ought
Okay,
maximize utility, right? So the
so
problem is
I have
you're
a
doing some
question
completely.
now.
The problem is, hold on. The problem is you're doing some
Mhm.
completely unrealistic scenario here, in which you're saying, well, if there's some X case and X case maximizes utility, and then there's some Y case and Y case doesn't maximize utility, you can replace these variables with literally fucking anything, and a utilitarian will always take X case.
Yeah, okay, so my question now is like, obviously, it's like trivially true that if you maximize utility in one case and don't do it in the other case, utilitarian would obviously do the first case. Like, that's not the issue
Mm-hmm.
I have. The issue I have is if we agree that there's a distinction between quantity of good and the quality. So my question
I
is,
agree.
okay, wait, you agree that there's a difference between the quantity of good and the quality, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my question is, how would you sort of like what sort of standard would you use to say that a quantity of good, or we should like, why would should we measure like whether or not an action is good based off of the quantity of good it does compared to the quality?
Are you just asking like how like you measure quantity versus quality?
No, like what would be the reason as to like, do you think, because again, the sort of intuition or the sort of reason that you're saying to support utilitarianism specifically is because of the fact that we have strong intuitions towards maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. But then do we share those same sort of intuitions when it comes to quality goods versus quantity? Because I think, like what's it called, our intuitions will sway towards the quality side, but I don't even think I need to make that claim for the argument to work.
Sorry. So
That
the
doesn't
thing
make
is,
sense.
anyways. So the thing is, like I just problem is I can agree some intuitions sway towards the quality side, but a utilitarian values both, right? So in the way we would like differentiate these two, in the way that we say, well, sometimes I'd value the quantity is, would you say like give some scenario in which you have the option to rape one person or blow two people's brains out, right? Um,
Oh,
well, there's more people being harmed, given the
yeah, no, I don't know. Like, if there's more people being harmed, I also don't even know like whether or not the quality is the same. That's the sort of point I'm making. Like,
no,
even
sorry,
if you
yeah,
say wait,
sorry,
even if you say
sorry,
like what's it
that
called,
was the
two
point.
people are being harmed. Wait, chill. Even if you say two people are being harmed and one person isn't being and one person is being harmed, right? So 2 to 1, right? It's like the
Mm-hmm.
quantity of people can sway towards one side, but how would you determine which one has a greater sort of quality of good which you value? That's
I
the
was just
sort of
about
thing
to
that
explain that.
utilitarians can account for. Okay, so
I
can you
was just
please
about to explain that.
go ahead?
So the way you would derive it is the quality of pleasure or suffering or whatever would be equivalent to one, how great the pleasure is or how great the suffering is. Like for example, like I'm sure everyone would probably agree, getting pricked on the finger is much worse than getting fucking raped. Everyone would agree with that.
Wait,
That's already like establishing equality.
wait. I think you said that the wrong way around. Everyone would agree getting pricked on the finger is worse than getting raped.
Well, obviously, better. I mean, whatever. What? Shut your bitch ass up, nigga.
No, no.
But yeah, obviously, like getting pricked on the finger is like less bad than getting raped. Everyone would agree with this. Uh, but there's some scenario in which like there's someone getting raped, and then there's like some stipulation at which like so many people get pricked on the finger at the exact same time that it would like outweigh not only the current suffering, but the overall suffering that this person would feel from
They
getting raped.
outweigh quantity or quality.
Quantity.
Quantity, okay, but then my question is, why should I value quantity over quality?
Because we want to. Because like I mean, like I think, as I said, like most people, or universally rather, people want to like maximize pleasure and minimize suffering.
Yeah, we can maximize pleasure and minimize suffering, but is the thing that we're valuing the amount of pleasure, the quality of pleasure?
Sorry, repeat the question.
Is the thing we're valuing the amount of pleasure, the quality of pleasure?
Both.
Yeah, no, okay, look, then, okay, even if I grant that it's both, if we have some sort of situation like a utilitarian would have to say that we are always valuing like we should always value like what's it called, maximizing it for the most amount of people, right? So clearly it seems as if like a utilitarian would say that it's the quantity that we're valuing there rather than the quality.
No, sorry, because it would be it'd be the quantity in conjunction with the quality. Obviously, like if you ask a fucking utilitarian, would you rather like have one person get raped or blow two people's brains out? It depends on the utilitarian, but most utilitarians would
Okay,
say, "I'd rather blow." Sorry, I was in the middle of
go
thinking. But I think the average utilitarian would say, "Well, we should blow two people's fucking brains out because the overall suffering, the trauma that this person is going to go through, the PTSD this person is going to go through from getting raped will outweigh the amount of suffering that these people went through from getting their brains blown out." I
Yeah,
think
look,
trivially, most utilitarians would say that.
yeah, no, it's like, look, it's the sort of thing where it's like, I don't know how to explain it to you properly more than I already have. It's like, I'll put in an analogy for you. Like, let's say, again, two people feel the same amount of pleasure. One of them gains it by acquiring knowledge about the external world. The other one gains it by beating his dick every day till he dies, right? Like clearly, and they gain the same amount of pleasure. Clearly, intuitively, we'd give more value to the first one rather than the second, right? So it seems as if like
Mm-hmm.
there's a real disconnect, right, between them. There's a real disconnect between quality of pleasure and quantity. So then, if I pose to you a sort of situation where like so one person has a greater quality of pleasure, whereas the other one has a greater amount of quality of quantity, right? How would a utilitarian wouldn't be able to properly account for that? And one of the sorts of virtues that I have whenever I'm talking about normative ethical theory is also its like pragmatic function, right? Since it's supposed to be action guiding. So if it's supposed to be action guiding, how do you like people aren't actually able to give a real sort of standard where we measure one against the other? Then how would we
Mm-hmm.
actually be able to determine, like in a real world situation, how would we be able to do anything at all if we are unable to actually gauge the two of them
Mm-hmm.
against each other?
All right, Yugi, do you want to get a closing statement, Yugi, and then Shinra, you can get the last word.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I was gonna ask Shinra one question, and then we can go to closings.
Okay,
But
good.
real quick, Shinra, you mentioned virtues there. Say there was some situation, right, in which there's someone getting raped, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's someone like got a prick on their finger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of the amount that these two situations goes against your virtues is in some possible world equalized. Would you
Mm-hmm.
say that? How would you derive that you should say, well, we ought not rape the one person over like someone getting pricked on the finger if given under your ethical system?
I
We
mean,
ought
look, I'm saying,
if
look,
given your under your ethical system,
you can
it's the exact same.
I don't hold to a specific ethical system. The entire point of the conversation was to explain why being a utilitarian is probably wrong, right? Because look, I'm a normative
You
anti.
mentioned virtues. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
You
it's like
mentioned
I'm a
virtues.
normative anti.
I'm asking you. You said I'm asking you. Given that virtue, say there was some equalized scenario, how would you account for that?
I mean, I just say like what's it called? I just say whichever like sort of action keeps you more aligned. I mean, I don't think I have like a sort of fleshed out standard specifically of how I should determine like quantity of a quality. But the fact that I can't determine and the fact that it seems so hard to determine a standard also shows you that's also called you being a utilitarian doesn't have the sort of pragmatic features we'd need in an adequate like normative ethical system.
The problem is, right? You can give all these insane hypotheticals, right? And all these insane hypotheticals can happen in some possible world. The problem is you're saying, well, given this insane hypothetical that would never fucking happen, is this the case? And trivially, under any ethical system, it would be the case, given like the two values of some given
Wait, repeat
hypotheticals
what you
or some
said?
given actions are equalized. That's just trivial.
Wait, repeat what you said?
Under any ethical system, given the values of two given actions or two given hypotheticals are equalized, then trivially they're fucking equal under that ethical system, right? So
Yeah,
you're saying,
no.
well,
This
it's just
seems
not
like
pragmatic. There's no, sorry.
go
Well,
ahead.
it's just not pragmatic. Well, yeah, the problem is, like, sure, given in this some hypothetical, random, crazy world, it's not pragmatic, but in our world it is, right? Because that wouldn't fucking happen in our world.
Yeah, no. Okay, look. So the situation, the reason why the sort of analogy is relevant is because it's trying to point out how even in that extreme situation, you can't determine which one has like a greater quality of good. So then, if I give you any given like ethical situation, and this is just gonna be my sort of closing statement, if I give any given sort of sort of ethical situation, you will never actually be able to give me a set sort of standard, right? That you'll never be able to give me a set sort of standard that determines which action has a greater quality of good compared to the quantity. And even if you are able to do that, you're also not going to be able to give me a set sort of standard where we determine which, like, what's it called, whether or not the quality of good should outweigh the quantity. So that's literally my closing statement. If you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe. This has been
Shut up,
Shinra.
bitch.
Okay, bye.
But yeah, my closing statement. I think everything beforehand like is completely irrelevant because Shinra just was confused on what act utilitarianism is. He read out a definition, not realizing it was inclusive of what I was saying, and it was exactly what I was saying. Is my definition. But after that, we got into this insane hypothetical where in some possible world, the utility derived from like a mother seeing her child, and then like like a person jerking off or a person doing drugs for their entire life. The pleasure derived from these two instances are equal. How does a utilitarian derive like which one we ought do or which one is better? This is just fucking trivial. Because you can do it to literally any system. And this just wouldn't happen in the real world, right? So he mentioned like it's not pragmatic. Utilitarianism is not pragmatic because well you can't figure out for insane hypotheticals like this, but insane hypotheticals like this don't fucking matter because for a utilitarian those wouldn't fucking happen, right? So let me just like illustrate why this fucking hypothetical is retarded. So say like you're a virtue ethicist, right? And there's some hypothetical, say 4 people getting fucking shot, and 1 person getting a lollipop, right? Now say the maximization of virtues is equalized for both of these situations, so they are necessarily valued equally.
Long
How do
ass
you
closing
derive which one is
statement.
valued equally? Right. Obviously, trivially, virtue ethicists would say, "Well, you can't derive which one is valued equally because they both maximize virtues to the same degree." Right. So obviously, the question makes no fucking sense. And that's the end of my closing.